On Sunday, 14th December 2025, crowds gathered at Archer Park beside Bondi Beach in Sydney for a public Hanukkah celebration commonly described in reporting as Hanukkah by the Sea, with attendance estimated at around 1,000 people. As daylight faded into early evening, two attackers, confirmed by police reports, a father and son duo, moved into position near the beachfront precinct and began the sequence of events that would turn the celebration into a mass casualty crime scene. In the lead-up to the shooting, investigators and later reporting described signs that drew attention to the men and their vehicle, including accounts that people nearby became alarmed and tried to intervene before gunfire erupted. Emergency calls began coming in at about 6:47 p.m. local time, AEDT, as shots were fired toward the gathering, and panic spread through the park and surrounding promenade. Within minutes, uniformed officers and emergency services converged on the area, with police moving toward the sound of gunfire while civilians fled, sheltered behind structures, or dropped to the ground. Authorities say the attackers fired into the crowd and the response escalated rapidly into an armed confrontation. During the chaos, multiple outlets reported acts of bystander bravery amid continuing danger, including accounts of at least one civilian attempting to disrupt or disarm an attacker, and police later highlighting interventions that may have reduced the toll, even as the situation remained volatile. Police ultimately shot both alleged gunmen. The older suspect, identified as Sajid Akram, 50, died at the scene, while the younger man, Naveed Akram, 24, was critically wounded and taken to hospital under guard. As medical teams began triage, ambulances ferried victims to multiple hospitals, and the beachfront precinct was locked down for hours, while specialist officers swept the area and investigators began preserving evidence. By late Sunday night and into Monday 15th December, the human scale of the attack became clearer as officials confirmed a mounting death toll and a large number of wounded. Authorities and major news agencies reported 15 victims killed and more than 20 injured, with some counts placing the number of injured higher as hospitals treated patients ranging from minor wounds to life-threatening trauma. Officials described the event as a targeted attack on the Jewish community during the opening of Hanukkah, and the national political response immediately framed it as both anti-Semitic and terror-linked. As investigators processed the scene, police and political leaders began publicly describing the case as terrorism, pointing to evidence they said indicated ideological motivation and extremist inspiration. In parallel, scrutiny turned to the security posture around the event and the speed and equipment of the frontline response, particularly after it emerged that at least 2 officers had been shot. Reporting in Australia described severe injuries, including one young officer who lost vision in one eye. Questions about how many officers were assigned directly to the park and whether a larger presence could have changed the outcome became part of the public discussion as police leadership defended their actions and signaled a review of procedures.
On Tuesday 16th December, the investigation widened beyond the immediate crime scene as detectives interviewed witnesses, reviewed video, and continued work around the surviving suspect's condition and ability to be questioned. Reporting described police questioning the suspect in hospital while he remained under guard, and authorities also spoke of lines of inquiry into extremist influence. Community grief and solidarity measures accelerated at the same time. Tributes accumulated at Bondi, blood donation appeals circulated, and vigils took place as the city and the country absorbed the scale of the violence. By Wednesday 17th December, police said the surviving suspect was formally charged. New South Wales Police announced 59 offences, including 15 counts of murder and a charge of committing a terrorist act, alongside multiple counts that reflected the breadth of harm across the crowd. Authorities continued to characterise the attack as ideologically driven and anti-Semitic, and news reporting described the investigation as ongoing under a named operation, with court dates set into 2026, as prosecutors prepared what is expected to be a complex terrorism and mass murder case. The same day, Funerals began for victims identified across a wide age range, including prominent members of the local Jewish community. Reuters reported overflowing mourners at services for Rabbi Eli Schlanger, and broader coverage described the victims as including children, elders, and people who were trying to protect others or intervene as the gunfire began. Political leaders reiterated condemnation and promises of support for families and the Jewish community, while New South Wales political leadership also signalled policy responses, particularly around firearms regulation and public safety, amid a renewed national debate over gun access and the changing threat environment. From the outset of the investigation, law enforcement and political leaders emphasised that the attack was not random. Prime Minister and New South Wales Police described it as a deliberate, targeted attack on Sydney's Jewish community during the first night of Hanukkah, highlighting both the timing and location as central to the perpetrator's intent. Beyond the basic identification of the two men, multiple elements have emerged that shape what is understood about their motivations. Police recovered Islamic State (ISIS) flags and improvised explosive devices (IEDs) in a vehicle registered to the younger suspect, suggesting an ideological component to the violence.
Authorities said these discoveries, along with statements from federal officials, indicate the attack was inspired by a terrorist organization, specifically Islamist extremist ideology associated with ISIS, though investigators have not publicly confirmed direct operational ties to the group.
The pair had travelled to the Philippines in late November 2025, a trip now under scrutiny for its possible connection to planning or training related to the attack. Australian police and international partners are investigating why they made the trip and whether they sought militant training or contact with extremist actors in regions like Mindanao, which has a history of Islamist insurgent activity, although definitive evidence of foreign involvement has not been publicly confirmed.
Law enforcement sources also indicated that Naveed Akram had previously come to the attention of intelligence agencies. In 2019, he was investigated in connection with individuals later convicted of terrorism-related offenses, but authorities determined there was no ongoing threat at the time and did not place him on a watch list. His associations did not lead to ongoing surveillance, and Australian officials stated neither father nor son were on a terrorism watch list immediately prior to the attack. The broader context of the attack includes a pattern of heightened tensions and anti-Semitic incidents in Australia related to international conflicts and domestic radicalisation pressures. Australian intelligence had raised the country's terrorism threat level earlier in the year, citing concerns about community tensions, including political violence and extremist rhetoric. The fact the celebration was a prominent public manifestation of Jewish culture and religion at the outset of Hanukkah was widely viewed by officials as fundamental to the attacker's choice of target. Despite political debates that have arisen, with some commentators arguing about the interpretation of motive, the prevailing official narrative from police, government leaders, and terrorism analysts is that the Bondi Beach shooters were driven by a blend of ideological extremism linked to ISIS propaganda and deep-seated anti-Semitic intent. This combination is what Australian authorities describe as the reason behind the attack: to inflict maximum harm on the Jewish community and strike at symbolic cultural and religious significance on an important holiday. In summary, while detailed evidence about how the father and son became radicalized or what direct connections they may have had to organized extremist groups continues to be examined, their motivations, as understood so far, center on extremist ideology and anti-Semitism, exacerbated by influences from global jihadist narratives and their explicit targeting of Jewish worshippers during a major holiday event. During the Bondi Beach Terror attack on 14th of December 2025, one of the most remarkable and widely reported acts of courage came from a bystander who intervened directly with one of the gunmen in the midst of the chaos. Video footage captured during the attack shows this man, identified by multiple outlets as Ahmed Al-Ahmed, a 43-year-old Sydney fruit shop owner and former police officer, running toward one of the armed attackers and tackling him from behind, seizing the rifle the shooter was carrying and wrestling it away. After forcing the weapon from the attacker's hands, Al-Ahmed placed it on the ground before returning to cover, temporarily disarming one of the perpetrators and preventing further immediate violence. Eyewitness accounts and hospital reports make clear that Al-Ahmed did not act with any thought for his own safety. According to his family, he had been on his way to get a coffee when the attack began. Seeing people being shot, he made a split-second decision to confront the gunmen, motivated by a desire to protect innocent lives rather than any plan or training. In the course of his intervention, he was shot multiple times, wounded in his arm and hand, and required surgery. He remains in hospital recovering from his injuries. Australian political leaders and commentators have hailed his actions as genuine heroism and instrumental in reducing the scale of the tragedy. New South Wales. Premier Chris Minns described Al Ahmed as a real-life hero, whose courage undoubtedly saved lives on a night of terror, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese personally visited him in hospital, praising him as the best of our country for risking everything to protect others. The public response has been immense. Millions of Australian dollars have been raised in donations to support his medical care and family, and there have been widespread calls for formal bravery awards to be bestowed upon him. In addition to this central act of intervention, reporting from the scene also highlights other displays of courage by ordinary people under fire. Instances of individuals shielding others, confronting attackers with whatever means were at hand, and assisting the wounded before emergency services arrived. These acts have been woven into the broader narrative of the event, contrasting starkly with the violence and underlining the profound human instinct to help others even in the face of grave danger. Ahmed Al-Ahmed's bravery has become one of the defining images of the Bondi Beach tragedy, a testament to selflessness and quick action in circumstances no one could have foreseen. Another similar event which happening elsewhere in the world is the Manchester synagogue attack in the UK. In October, during Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism, when worshippers were gathered for prayer. While these two attacks are seen as separate incidents, they sit within a broader historical and contemporary pattern. Violent actors have repeatedly targeted Jewish communities during festivals or holy days when people are gathered and symbolism is strongest. Notable examples include the 2002 Passover massacre in Netanya, where a Hamas suicide bomber attacked a Passover Seder, killing 30 people, and the Farhud pogrom of 1941, which erupted during Shavuot in Baghdad and left more than 100 Jews dead. Whilst these sort of attacks aren't unheard of, the recent spate of attacks highlight a broad phenomenon of anti-Semitic violence and terrorism in which attackers deliberately choose Jewish religious festivals, holy days, or moments of communal gathering as the time and setting for their attacks. The latest verified facts surrounding the investigations, as at the time of creating this video, are that the surviving suspect has now been formally charged with 59 offenses, including 15 counts of murder, multiple counts of causing grievous bodily harm, and 1 count of committing a terrorist act. He's been transferred from hospital to a high-security prison under heavy guard, where he'll remain in custody ahead of trial. Bail has been denied, and his trial is scheduled for a date in April 2026. It's now known the father and son duo spent months planning the attack, including reconnaissance of the event site before the mass shooting. Court documents and police files reveal they conducted firearms training together in rural areas and recorded videos expressing extremist justifications for violence. Investigators allege the pair threw improvised explosive devices toward the crowd before opening fire, though none detonated. Recovered CCTV footage reportedly shows them carrying weapons and extremist flags before entering Archer Park.